Picture this scenario. You walk into your local grocery store, and as you cross the threshold, your phone buzzes.
Yeah, we've all been there.
Right. And it's this highly personalized AI-generated coupon for, like, that exact brand of artisanal oat milk you've been buying for the last 3 months.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, the timing is flawless, the targeting is perfect. So you pull up the coupon, you walk back to the dairy aisle, and the shelf is completely empty.
Which is incredibly frustrating. And honestly, that scenario perfectly captures the fundamental friction in retail right now.
How so?
Well, from the outside, you see this sleek, modern brand. But on the inside, the technology is highly fractured. The marketing AI that sent you the coupon is a marvel of modern engineering, right?
Right.
And the supply chain AI that manages the store's inventory is also a marvel. But they have absolutely no idea that the other exists. The industry calls this operating in separate layers.
Okay, let's unpack this. Think of these retail operations like a band.
Okay, I like that.
Every single person in this band is a master of their instrument. You've got the best drummer, the best bassist, the best guitarist. But while they are on stage playing, they're all wearing noise-canceling headphones.
So they can't hear each other at all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're playing technically perfect music, but they aren't playing the same song. That is essentially the state of the retail technology stack today.
That's a great way to look at it.
You have an algorithm predicting demand and another algorithm designing the store layout, but they are completely deaf to one another. And that brings us to our mission for today's deep dive. We are looking at exactly how the industry intends to take the headphones off the band.
And we have a very specific lens for this exploration. We're looking through the notes of an invite-only Microsoft retail and consumer packaged goods startup showcase.
A very exclusive event.
Very. It's an event taking place in Paris on April 23, 2026, hosted by Sheesh S. And the showcase features a highly curated lineup of just 10 startups.
But the objective here isn't to just, run through a list of 10 neat tech companies. As the notes highlight, the goal is to solve this exact problem of fragmentation.
What's fascinating here is the underlying philosophy of the showcase. Shish S explicitly notes that the goal is moving from awareness to application.
Meaning what exactly?
Well, it is one thing for an enterprise leader to know that a specific AI tool exists. It is an entirely different operational challenge to put enterprise leaders and startup founders in the same room, look at these individual puzzle pieces, and figure out how they interlock to form a complete living ecosystem.
Right. And to understand how you build that cohesive machine, we have to start at the absolute beginning of the product lifecycle.
The very top of the funnel.
Exactly. Because you cannot fix the physical store or the e-commerce experience until you actually understand what the market wants in the first place. We have to start with the brain of the operation.
Market intelligence.
Yes, market intelligence. And the source notes introduce a company called Tembi to address this. Tembi provides a continuous, forward-looking view of pricing, assortment, and delivery dynamics.
To understand why that matters, we have to look at how retail has historically operated. Traditionally, demand forecasting has relied on historical regression.
Looking backwards, basically.
Right. You look at what sold last quarter, you put that data into a massive spreadsheet, you account for basic seasonality, and you just guess what will sell next quarter.
Which seems a bit risky in today's market.
It is. But Tembi's approach shifts the mechanics entirely. Instead of looking in the rearview mirror, it ingests live, dynamic variables.
Like what kind of variables?
Like shifting freight costs, localized competitor pricing, and emerging supply constraints. It uses all that to predict where demand is actively going.
So it's the difference between analyzing where the water pooled after the storm versus tracking the atmospheric pressure to know where it's going to rain tomorrow.
That's exactly it.
And running parallel to that structural market data is the second company in the notes, iGenie.ai. If Tembi is calculating the macro dynamics, iGenie.ai is capturing the actual voice of the customer.
Which is so crucial.
It is. It pulls unstructured data reflecting how people actually engage with products and brands across digital channels, and it does this in near real time.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this fundamentally alters category strategy.
How so?
Well, Insight stops being a static quarterly report presented in a boardroom. It becomes an evolving, continuous data stream. iGenie.ai processes the natural language of thousands or even millions of interactions to identify shifting consumer sentiment the exact moment it happens.
Okay, I want to pause and push back on this for a second.
Sure.
How is iGenie.ai mechanically different from, a traditional focus group? Are we essentially just using AI to automate the old school process of asking people what they like?
Not exactly.
Because if it's just a faster focus group, that doesn't feel like a structural revolution. And furthermore, doesn't pulling real-time digital engagement make retail strategy incredibly volatile? Like, if a specific aesthetic blows up on a Tuesday because of a viral video, a physical supply chain can't realistically pivot by Wednesday.
Okay, those are two critical points.
Hmm.
To agree with the first one, it is fundamentally different because of the authenticity of the environment. Think about a traditional focus group.
Yeah.
You put 10 people in a sterile room, offer them a gift card, and ask them to evaluate a new shampoo bottle.
Right, it's very contrived.
Exactly. That is an artificial environment, and humans naturally filter their responses when they know they're being observed. iGenie.ai isn't asking prompted questions.
Oh, I see.
It is scraping organic, unfiltered conversations in the wild. As for the volatility question, that is exactly why the integration with a tool like Tembi is necessary.
Ah, so they work together.
Right. A viral spike on Tuesday doesn't mean you instantly retool a factory on Wednesday. It means the AI detects an emerging pattern, cross-references it with Tembi's supply-side data, and allows the brand to make an informed, agile decision.
Like what?
Like perhaps shifting digital ad spend toward existing inventory that fits the trend, rather than completely upending long-term category planning based on a whim.
Okay, that distinction makes a lot of sense. You are observing the ecosystem naturally and balancing those short-term spikes with macro capability.
Precisely.
But this brings us to a massive operational hurdle. Having the smartest, most predictive brain in the world is entirely useless if the physical store doesn't actually reflect those insights.
All just theory at that point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The intelligence has to move from the digital ether down into the physical aisles. We basically have to transition from the brain to the muscle.
And execution is notoriously where high-level digital insights fail. You can have a perfect predictive model, but if the physical shelf is stocked incorrectly, or the layout confuses the shopper.
The transaction just never happens.
Exactly. And the source notes present a company called OmniStream to bridge this gap.
Right, OmniStream. They take that high-level demand data we just analyzed and translate it into literal store-level decisions.
Yes. Specifically, they focus on generating and dynamically adjusting what are called planograms.
And for those unfamiliar, a planogram is essentially the visual structural map of how products should be arranged on a shelf.
Right, like where the premium items go versus the generic ones.
Exactly. OmniStream uses real data to build these layouts for specific individual locations.
This solves a major bottleneck. Historically, because designing a single planogram took human analysts weeks of work, a national brand might push out 1 or 2 static layouts for every store in the country.
Which makes no sense when you think about it.
It doesn't. A shopper in a downtown urban environment has drastically different purchasing behaviors than a shopper in a sprawling suburban area.
Yeah, that explains why your local downtown store might prioritize single-serve, grab-and-go items right at eye level.
While the suburban location dedicates that same prime real estate to bulk family packs. By automating the generation of these layouts, OmniStream allows the physical shelf to dynamically match the localized demand predicted by the intelligence layer.
But designing the perfect shelf is only half the battle, right? You then have to verify that the store is actually functioning the way it was designed.
Absolutely.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The showcase highlights a startup called Shopper AI, which interprets human behavior and execution in the store. But they do it by tapping into the store's existing camera infrastructure.
Which is brilliant.
Right. The cameras are already hanging from the ceiling. Shopper AI essentially just gives them a new analytical brain. It's like unlocking a hidden superpower in your smartphone without having to buy new hardware.
And by utilizing existing hardware, the barrier to entry for the retailer drops significantly. You don't need to retrofit a massive physical space with millions of dollars in new sensors.
Oh, that makes it so much easier to adopt.
It does. And when you pair Shopper AI's visual analysis with the next startup in the notes, Ariadne Maps, you get a highly detailed view of physical execution.
Ariadne Maps tracks the actual movement of people through physical spaces, right?
Exactly. It measures how long they dwell in specific zones and how the store's environmental layout influences those physical traffic patterns.
So tying these together, OmniStream designs the shelf based on the data. Ariadne Maps tells you that 50 people walked down that specific aisle today,
Yep.
and Shopper AI tells you that out of those 50 people, only 2 actually reached out and interacted with the layout OmniStream designed.
Exactly. If that happens, you immediately know you have a conversion problem on that specific shelf. If we connect this to the bigger picture, these three tools working in tandem make the physical store as measurable and responsive as an e-commerce website.
Wow.
You are mapping the physical journey with the same fidelity as tracking mouse clicks on a landing page.
I do have to ask about the operational mechanics of tracking movement and dwell time, though.
Sure.
When we talk about watching a listener walk down an aisle and pause in front of the cereal, does that cross the line into feeling a bit Big Brother? Is this technology identifying individuals, or is it purely an operational metric?
That is a vital operational distinction. The technology highlighted in these frameworks generally focuses on tracking patterns, not identities.
Okay, that's a relief.
Yeah, to use the website analogy again, when a site tracks a mouse click, it is trying to figure out if a button is placed in a confusing spot, not trying to build a dossier on the user's life.
Right, it's about the layout, not the person.
Similarly, these spatial analytics tools don't care about your identity. They care that shopper 402 stopped in aisle 4 for 60 seconds but walked away without an item. The mechanism is designed to identify friction in the physical environment so the retailer can remove it. They are tracking the traffic flow, not the individual driver.
Right. Okay, so we've mapped the overarching market, we've organized the physical store, and we're tracking the foot traffic.
We've covered a lot of ground.
But how does the brand actually communicate with the individual shopper standing in that aisle or the person browsing on their phone at home? That transition brings us to the face of the operation.
Personalization and how brands are adapting to new discovery paradigms.
Because ultimately, all of this back-end infrastructure has to culminate in a meaningful interaction with the consumer.
And the technical standard for what qualifies as a meaningful interaction has shifted dramatically over the last few years.
It really has. The notes highlight Hot.ai as a prime example of this shift. Hot.ai is moving retail personalization away from analyzing past behavior and toward addressing real-time individual needs.
Which is a massive leap.
It is. They use image analysis to evaluate a user's skin and provide highly tailored skincare recommendations. It is literally analyzing your specific physical reality in the moment you use it. It's almost like having a world-class dermatologist living right in your phone.
This raises an important question about how we define personalization. For roughly 2 decades, personalization in e-commerce essentially meant collaborative filtering.
Like those recommendation bars at the bottom of a page.
Exactly. We all know the format. Customers who bought item X also bought item Y.
Right.
But mechanically, that isn't true personalization. That is statistical grouping based on crowd behavior. It's basically a guess.
A really educated guess, but still a guess.
Right. What Hot.ai represents is a shift to deterministic analysis. The system is saying, here's exactly what your specific skin needs today based on its current measurable state. It bridges the gap between a generic product catalog and a bespoke scientific consultation.
So the focus moves from what do people like you buy 6 months ago to what does your biology require right now?
Exactly.
But wait, Hada.ai's level of personalization only works if the customer is already interacting directly with the brand's application.
Sure.
How does a brand even get discovered in a world where consumers are changing how they search for products? The source notes point to a company called Writesonic attempting to solve this exact gap.
Writesonic manages the life cycle of a brand's digital presence.
Right, but the key phrase here is that they optimize for AI-driven search experiences. So we all understand standard SEO, right? Optimizing a blog post with keywords so it ranks on Google. But what does it actually mean to optimize content for an AI-driven search experience? How does that mechanism differ?
Think about the fundamental shift in how a user requests information. Previously, you typed fragmented keywords into a search bar, like best winter moisturizer dry skin.
And a search engine indexed metadata to give you a list of blue links.
Right. But today, a user is more likely to speak a complex conversational query to an AI assistant. They might say, what is the best moisturizer for sensitive skin during a dry winter that doesn't contain these 3 specific chemicals?
Right. They're asking a complete question and expecting a synthesized answer, not a reading list.
Precisely. And to ensure a brand's product is recommended in that synthesized answer, the brand's underlying digital content cannot just be stuffed with keywords.
Because the AI is actually reading it.
Exactly. The data has to be structured, vectorized, and semantically organized in a way that a large language model can ingest it, understand the context of the product, and confidently recommend it to the user.
Wow!
Writesonic provides the infrastructure to translate a brand's digital catalog into a format that these new AI gatekeepers can actually comprehend.
So you aren't just marketing to the human anymore. You are marketing to the human's AI assistant, hoping the assistant understands your data well enough to recommend you.
It's a whole new world.
That is a massive paradigm shift. But this brings us to a harsh reality check. All of these advanced tools we've discussed, predicting global demand, dynamic planograms, diagnostic skin analysis, semantic AI search, every single piece of this will fail if the retailer's underlying enterprise technology is stuck a decade in the past.
Which it usually is.
Right, we have to look at the skeleton, the invisible enterprise foundation.
It is undeniably the least visible part of the operational stack, but it is the absolute prerequisite for any of the innovations we've discussed. You simply cannot run a cutting-edge, real-time AI ecosystem on brittle, outdated infrastructure.
And the showcase notes feature 3 startups focused purely on repairing and reinforcing this foundation. First, there's Modern.
Right.
Their distinct focus is on modernizing massive legacy enterprise code bases. They systematically clean and refactor old code so it can handle advanced workflows without introducing system-breaking complexity.
That's step one.
Then, sitting right on top of that modernized foundation, you have a company called Wonderful. Wonderful deploys AI agents to operate across different software systems, allowing complex work to connect across different company functions.
Which is where things get really efficient.
And finally, as the entire experience becomes increasingly digital, the notes highlight Evinced. Evinced integrates accessibility directly into the software development process, ensuring digital products reach the broadest possible audience without slowing down the engineering team's velocity.
It's a really comprehensive trio.
So what does this all mean in practice? Because I'm going to push back here. When we talk about code-based refactoring and accessibility compliance, it simply doesn't grab headlines the way diagnostic AI skincare or dynamic store mapping does.
It definitely isn't as sexy, no.
Right. Why is this foundational modernization step consistently the massive bottleneck for these multi-billion-dollar retail brands? Why is it so hard for them to just update their software?
It's an excellent question, and the answer lies in understanding technical debt.
Technical debt.
Yeah. Think about how massive global retailers actually grew over the last 30 years. They grew by acquisition. A central corporation bought a regional chain in Europe. They bought a distinct warehouse management system in Asia. And they patched together dozens of different custom-built legacy systems.
So it's a mess behind the scenes.
It is a tangled, undocumented web of code.
So it's not like simply updating an app on your smartphone. It's more like trying to replace the foundational plumbing in a 100-story high-rise while all the tenants are currently taking a shower.
That is a perfect analogy.
If you pull the wrong pipe, the whole building floods.
That is the exact mechanical problem. Modern acts as a system that autonomously maps and safely replaces those pipes without disrupting the water flow. And this ties directly into the concept of agentic ecosystems that Sheesh S. writes about.
Agentic ecosystems.
Yes. When the source material refers to agentic workflows, like what Wonderful provides, it means the software stops being a passive tool you use and becomes an active employee you manage. It has agency.
Oh, wow.
An agentic system sees a supply shortage, makes a decision, and automatically executes a reorder across multiple internal systems. But if your underlying code is a tangled mess, that autonomous agent will either break the system or fail to execute entirely. You cannot deploy autonomous agents into a digital environment that isn't standardized.
So the AI agent is really only as capable as the environment it operates within. If the foundation is broken, the AI is effectively paralyzed.
Exact.
And how does Evinced fit into this foundational rebuild?
Well, Evinced addresses a persistent structural flaw in how software is historically built. The old engineering mindset treated accessibility, like ensuring a site works for visually impaired users, for example.
Right.
It treated it as a compliance checklist at the very end of a project. It was viewed as a hurdle that slowed down the release. Evinced provides tools that bake accessibility testing into the code as it is being written.
Oh, that makes so much more sense.
It proves that structural inclusivity and development speed are not mutually exclusive. A truly modern technological skeleton isn't just fast and stable, it is fundamentally accessible to the entire market from day one.
So if we pull back and look at the entire journey the source material has laid out for us, the scope of this transformation becomes pretty clear.
It's massive.
We started by looking at the brain, sensing market demand dynamically with Tembi, and capturing the unfiltered voice of the customer with iGenie.ai. Then we moved to the muscle, translating those insights into the physical store with OmniStream's dynamic planograms, verifying execution with Shopper AI, and mapping the spatial journey with Ariadne Maps.
And then we went to the face.
Right, the face. shifting personalization from statistical guessing to deterministic analysis with Hot.ai, and adapting to the new reality of AI-driven search with Writesonic. And finally, we dug into the skeleton, reinforcing the tangled enterprise plumbing with modern, deploying agentic workflows with wonderful, and hardwiring accessibility with Evinced.
When you lay it out sequentially like that, the core purpose of bringing these specific 10 companies to Paris becomes totally evident.
It's all connected.
Exactly. The objective isn't to look at 10 isolated software features. It is to study the complete anatomy of the future retailer. By placing these startup founders and enterprise leaders in the same environment, the industry is actively working to dismantle those separate layers of innovation we discussed at the very beginning. They are doing the hard operational work of getting the band to finally play the same song.
It is a massive undertaking. We are essentially talking about completely rewiring the central nervous system of global commerce, from the manufacturer's predictive data all the way down to the exact placement of a cereal box on a physical shelf.
It is a total rewiring. And as we consider where this all leads, I want to leave you with a final thought, pulling from Shishes's overarching focus on physical AI and agentic retail.
Okay, let's hear it.
Right now, the vast majority of the tools we've explored today are designed to help human operators make better decisions. An AI suggests a new store layout, and a human manager approves it. A system flags a trend, and a human marketer writes the copy.
The human is always in the loop.
For now, yes. But as these foundational layers get modernized, and as the brain, the muscle, and the face fully interconnect, a profound shift is on the horizon. How long until the physical store itself becomes fully agentic?
Whoa.
Meaning, the overarching AI system doesn't just suggest an inventory change, it autonomously orders the stock, adjusts the digital pricing to reflect real-time supply, and shifts the marketing copy across the AI search engines to drive foot traffic.
Yeah.
All continuously, without a human being ever pressing a button or signing an approval.
That's incredible.
The next time you walk into a major retail store and pick an item off the shelf, ask yourself, who is actually running the floor?
That is a staggering operational thought to take with us on our next grocery run. The band isn't just taking off their noise-canceling headphones. They are rapidly approaching a point where they are writing and performing entirely new songs on the fly autonomously. We want to thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the underlying architecture of retail technology. Keep looking closer at the hidden systems around you. Stay curious and keep exploring.